This is the Behind the Line podcast, coming to you from the crazy, chaotic lines of the Pacific Northwest. Well, Washington State is a beautiful state, and we have good weather and great places to visit. If you can overlook the liberal policies, and if you want to live in the capital of taxation in the United States, then just come on over here to Washington. Washington has become the first state to add NFTs, non-fungible tokens, to the list of properties subject to its sales and use tax provisions. And this happened in July, making it the first American state to do so, though it is not likely to be the last. Sales taxes apply to the purchase of all goods or services by consumers and businesses, while a use tax is applied on state tax returns where no sales tax has been paid, such as for goods and services from out-of-state vendors, and that amount is equal to the sales tax in the state where the items were sold. The volume of NFT sales in the U.S. and worldwide is anyone's guess, but the blockchain tracking company nonfungible.com estimated 17 billion in NFT transactions worldwide in 2021, and others put that number at 25 billion. In the past several years, states have seen the prices for NFTs soar, says the New York lawyer Amelia K. Brankov. All that money attracts revenue officials' interest, and some states are focusing in on the taxability of NFT sales. In Washington, the sales tax rate is 6.5%, but that may be the only thing that is clear-cut about this process. Taxing NFTs is complicated by uncertainty over where they are sourced, which can be a tricky question with an NFT sale, which is typically conducted through a transfer of the asset to a digital wallet, not a physical address. Many digital marketplaces exist, and some states currently require them to collect a sales tax, but compliance has been inconsistent. If a marketplace fails to collect the tax, the buyer may be liable for it. Beyond that, some states recognize digital products like NFTs as taxable, while others do not, making the determination of whether or not taxes are owed confusing. At the time of going to press, 32 states have rules permitting the taxation of digital products, including Pennsylvania, Texas, and Washington, while 12 specifically exempt these items, including California, Florida, and New York. Augustin M. Barbara, a managing partner of the Miami-based firm The Crypto Lawyers, says many of those 32 states already have the statutory framework in place that would allow for the taxation of NFT sales, even though the statutory language does not explicitly mention NFTs. Of course, their mouths are watering. They see all this money being thrown around, and they want a piece of it. They want a piece of your money. There is less confusion at the federal level. The IRS announced in 2014 that it would treat cryptocurrencies as property, so that every time an owner of cryptocurrency uses it, that person would pay a tax on any gains. Additionally, the 2018 Supreme Court decision in South Dakota versus Wayfair, which ruled that businesses without a physical presence in a state with more than 200 transactions or $100,000 of interstate sales must collect and remit sales taxes on transactions in the state, is likely to be applied to NFT sales platforms. In the coming months, the IRS is expected to issue guidelines for federal taxation of digital assets, a revenue-raising provision of the Biden administration's infrastructure law that was enacted last autumn. This provision requires brokers of digital products such as sales platforms to obtain physical addresses and social security numbers of buyers and sellers, and these brokers will have to submit information returns, 1099 forms, that users of their sites would need when filing personal tax returns. The ability of Washington or any other state to enforce sales taxation on NFTs will depend on the existence of 1099 forms, says Rosemary Ringwald, the national head of art planning at Bank of America's private banking division. Washington State is blazing a new trail in this, but it is inevitable that other states are going to follow suit. Well, you're already getting taxed by the feds every time you use a cryptocurrency, and now you're going to get taxed by the state you're in as well, or at least Washington State if you're here. All these little government agencies have to have their hands in your piece of the pie. You wouldn't want to be able to keep your own money, would you now? It's always about the taxes with government. Tax, tax, tax. Washington State has a huge drug problem, which is fueled by all these liberal policies in our state to allow drugs and lesser prosecutions for drugs. We have a very large gang presence and problem I personally know of because I have arrested and dealt with many gang members in my law enforcement and fugitive recovery years of work. Over 20 years of that. A Washington State man has pled guilty Monday to federal charges concerning his alleged involvement in an international drug trafficking organization linked to a Mexican drug cartel. The subject is from Kent, Washington, admitted in a plea agreement to being one of the leaders of a transnational drug trafficking organization, the DTO, that distributed heroin, fentanyl, and methamphetamine, some of Seattle's favorite drugs, in the Puget Sound region. Law enforcement have linked the group to the Cajun cartel in Mexico. Prosecutors said the DTO received a shipment of liquid methamphetamine concealed in candles in November 2019. Barbosa helped DTO members extract the methamphetamine and cook it into crystal form at Port Orchard, Washington, prosecutors said. He was responsible for distributing at least 55 pounds of methamphetamine, 600 grams of heroin, and fentanyl throughout western Washington and elsewhere, the Justice Department said in a press release. Prosecutors said Barbosa also pursued those who owed drug debts and possessed firearms during the drug conspiracy. On one occasion, Barbosa took a car from another organization member to satisfy a drug debt and later threatened the same member. He faces a mandatory minimum of 10 years in prison and up to life in prison when he is sentenced in December. Prosecutors have agreed to recommend no more than 168 months in prison. It's stuff like this that old Jay Inslee and the city council in Seattle are directly responsible for. 55 pounds of meth, all those grams of heroin and fentanyl, which is lethal. But hey, they don't care. Just drive around the streets of Seattle and see how many people are doped up at all hours of the day, smoking meth right in front of anybody and everybody walking past. Families in busy areas of Pioneer Square. City has no concern, and state government officials in charge also have no concern. Good news for Boise, Idaho. A company called Micron will invest $15 billion in a new memory fabrication manufacturing facility in Boise, the first of its kind in the U.S. in 20 years. The investment comes as the first of Micron's multiple planned U.S. investments following the passage of the CHIPS and Science Act, company officials announced Thursday. The company plans to invest the $15 billion over the course of 10 years, with the goal of ensuring domestic supply of leading-edge memory required for market segments like automotive and data center, fueled by accelerating adoption of artificial intelligence and 5G, according to a press release from Micron. The expansion is expected to create more than 17,000 jobs, including around 2,000 direct Micron jobs, by the end of the decade, according to the announcement. Our new leading-edge memory manufacturing fab will fuel U.S. technology leadership, ensuring a reliable domestic supply of semiconductors that is critical to economic and national security, Micron President and CEO Sanjay Mehrotra said in a statement. We also appreciate the support of Governor Little and his administration, Idaho state legislators, Mayor McLean, and our partners at Idaho Power. We are proud of the positive impact this investment will have on the community and our more than 6,000 employees located in Boise Micron's headquarters and the epicenter of our innovation for over 40 years. Micron has also announced plans to invest in Idaho K-12 STEM education programs and increase focus on reaching underrepresented and rural student populations. The company also plans to work with local universities, including a new partnership with the College of Western Idaho. The Idaho-based company will also invest in a world-class child care facility to support the growing employee population, according to the release. The investment is part of Micron's $150 billion global investment the company plans to make over the next decade in manufacturing and R&D. Well, definitely a good move for Idaho and the U.S. These sorts of things should only be made in the U.S. We should not be outsourcing with other countries for this technology. And if you're not working in Oregon, I guess the government still has your back. Most Oregonians who receive Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program SNAP benefits will receive emergency allotments in September. The federal government has approved emergency allotments every month since March 2020. This gives SNAP recipients additional support during the COVID-19 pandemic. These emergency benefits are a temporary support that Oregon can provide because of the federal COVID-19 public health emergency. Because the federal government approved these emergency benefits for September, Oregon will also be able to issue them in October. However, the emergency benefits are expected to end when the federal public health emergency ends, whenever that might be. In September, approximately 433,000 SNAP households will receive approximately $69 million in extra food benefits in addition to their regular SNAP benefits. This is just in the state of Oregon. Current SNAP households will receive emergency allotments on September 13th. Emergency allotments will be issued September 30th or October 4th for households who did not receive benefits in the first monthly issuance. SNAP recipients do not have to take any action to receive these supplemental benefits, as they will be issued directly on their EBT cards. I just wonder when the government is going to wake up and realize that this little show has to come to an end. And it's going to be really rough on these people who are relying solely on the government to support them. The State of Oregon Department of Education has determined that receiving a high school diploma in Oregon is inequitable. ODE has determined that the skills and knowledge expected by business, industry, and post-secondary education do not fully align with the current requirements for the Oregon diploma. Oregon currently has one of the most stringent requirements for high school graduation. And they also have determined that the requirements for Oregon high school diplomas have been applied inequitably to different student populations. ODE has developed final recommendations by following the principles listed that I'm about to read when synthesizing the information gathered from the review and engagement process they conducted, which was talking to about 3,500 students. Center accountability on systems, not students. Place accountability on systems to provide the educational resources needed to make requirements feasible for students. Reflect student and community assets. Equity in graduation requirements demands that Oregon's diploma process honors and recognizes student, family, and community diversity, culture, assets, and strengths, especially communities who have been historically marginalized, such as those experiencing poverty, those experiencing housing instability, those experiencing disabilities, those experiencing mobility, those who are multilingual, and students who identify as Black, African American, Indigenous, or Native, LGBTQ, SIA+ community members. Prepare students for their futures. Diploma requirements must be designed so students are prepared to thrive in the ever-complex and changing world after graduation. Yes, the real world outside of your little emotionally fueled high school. And this is going to make things worse for these kids, I think. Create coherence and clarity. Diploma requirements should be accessible with clear expectation and steps to achieving a diploma identified. These recommendations are intended to make Oregon's diploma requirements more equitable, accessible, and inclusive for all students. I just feel sorry for these kids going through high school right now, and when they graduate and enter the real world where actual expectations will be upheld and they'll be expected to perform instead of just given a pass like the current state of the education system wants to do. Make it easier and easier for these kids to graduate, so when they hit the real world, when they hit the streets, it's going to be a real shock. It's going to be a real wake-up call. And here's a little wake-up call for California, and I hope Washington is paying attention as well. Days after announcing a ban on the sale of many gasoline-powered cars in the state of California starting in 2035, California is asking residents to avoid charging their electric vehicles during peak usage hours to save energy as a late summer heat wave grips the Golden State. Temperature is expected to be upwards of 30 degrees above average in most of California. The state's independent system operator asked residents on Wednesday to limit use of major appliances, avoid charging electric vehicles, and turn off unnecessary lights between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. when demand is highest. PG&E, California's largest utility provider, is also encouraging consumers to conserve energy any way they can, especially after 4 p.m. Experts say other easy ways to conserve energy is by avoiding laundry, vacuuming, and dishwashing during peak energy times. They say customers can also set their thermostat at 78 degrees or higher. Out of the nearly 40 million residents in the state, there is only around 500,000 registered electric vehicles, or just about 1% of the residents. Charging electric vehicles can have the same strain on the power grid as most major appliances. A typical electric vehicle charging on an at-home level 2 charger will use about 7,200 watts or less, according to the United States Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. For reference, that's less than a typical electric furnace uses, but more than an air conditioner. The request comes nearly a week after the California Air Resources Board banned the sale of new gas-powered cars in the state after 2035. Several states, including Virginia, are expected to follow, and Washington has already. California's lead on banning the sale of new gas-powered vehicles. Wow. I mean, this is a prime example that these electrical grids are not capable of handling everybody driving an electric car. And now we're going to have to just have blackout periods if we want to do this. This isn't doable. Californians are asking themselves if they're going to have blackouts over the Labor Day weekend as California heads into the hottest weekend of the year with temperatures expected in the high 90s. Across much of the Bay Area and some inland areas forecast to hit a scorching 110 degrees or more on Monday and Tuesday. The massive demand for air conditioning is straining the state's power grid. 2 years ago, during a similar heat wave on August 14th and 15th, 2020, when electricity use exceeded supplies, rolling blackouts cut power to 812,000 customers around the state for up to 2 hours each day. California's first such rotating outages since 2001. Could it happen again this weekend? If I had to bet, I would bet we aren't going to have rotating outages, but it's going to be tight, said Severin Bornstein, a business professor at UC Berkeley and board member of the Independent System Operator, the agency that runs California's power grid. Every day since Wednesday, the ISO has issued a flex alert in which it asks residents not to run large appliances like dishwashers or washing machines from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. and to turn off air conditioning or turn it down to 78 degrees if possible to reduce electricity demand. Similar flex alerts are a near certainty into next week. That's every day since Wednesday. On Thursday, amid unusually hot weather statewide, electricity demand in California hit 47,357 megawatts, the most on any day since September 2017. There were no power interruptions in part because voluntary conservation from residents and businesses reduced demand by 1,200 megawatts. This is what I've been talking about. Why don't these Democrats have some kind of plan in place for all these cuts to the electric system they're trying to make? They want to cut the dams. They want to cut our power supply. They want to cut gasoline-powered cars and have you all charging your cars on a system that can't even handle air conditioners during a heat wave. And it's Southern California. It gets hot. To go right along with this, state lawmakers voted to extend Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant operations as the state battles an energy emergency. In a late-night, last-minute vote, California lawmakers approved a measure to give the state the option to keep its last remaining nuclear power plant operating for another 5 years. contingent on, among other things, the utility operating the power plant getting access to federal funding. The decision is a reversal of a previous decision to shut the power plant down and comes amid an energy crunch in the state. Are you kidding me? I mean, this is what we're talking about. You've got to have the power to do these things, and you've got to get it from somewhere. And right now, we don't have any other options but nuclear, coal, and hydro, all of which California is trying to cut. How are you going to run everything you need to run? How are people going to charge all their little electric vehicles? These politicians are nuts, and so are the people who follow them. You want all these green things, that's fine. That's fine. But find a way to do it and implement it before you cut what currently works and supports all the people who live in said area. Have a plan. There is no plan. They're just talking on emotion, pure emotion. They want this, and so we're going to do it and figure it out on the way. That doesn't work in a modern society. And the ability of the government to do anything right. An evacuation order telling residents to leave Los Angeles immediately was accidentally broadcast on television Wednesday, authorities said. Viewers in Ventura County who were watching TV at the time received the frightening alert, according to the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. The notice was sent in error by the County of Los Angeles, the Sheriff's Office said in a tweet. There is no threat to Ventura County at this time and no need for residents to evacuate, it said. It is not clear how many viewers saw the alert, which read, "Emergency Alert System. A civil authority has issued an immediate evacuation notice for the following counties or areas." This was in response to a large wildfire moving in the Ventura County area, which closed Interstate 5. Remember this happening in Hawaii a few years ago when they issued an alert saying there were nuclear missiles inbound? I've worked in an emergency operations center, and that's not an easy mistake to make. You don't just push a single button to send that thing out. So it just makes me wonder how this happened, why it happened, or how incompetent the people in charge that let this happen are. This is your government at work. They're pretty inept. Thank you for listening to the Behind the Line podcast. For more, visit behindthelinepodcast.com. You can also find us on netnewsnetwork.net, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Telegram, Gab, Parler, and Truth Social. Please like, share, and subscribe.